A couple of weeks ago I did a video on the water-soluble oil sticks from Phoenix. Now it was my first time using oil sticks, and I've got to say I found them really enjoyable. But it dawned on me, not everybody knows too much about pigment sticks or oil sticks. So I thought I'd do this video just to try and give you some idea of what oil paint sticks are and the differences between them and oil pastels. So I hope you enjoy watching. So these here are my oil sticks. Now on the screen they're not going to mean too much to you, but if I put them in my hand you can see just how big they are, and they are well used now because I have actually done a picture with them as you saw. I'll show you anyway. But they're probably down about 1/2 inch maybe. This one's down about 1/2 inch, maybe the black. Yeah, it's about the same. So they're actually quite thick, chunky sticks. At first glance they don't look any different to oil pastels. Now this here is a normal standard size oil pastel. It is my belief that when they make larger stick oil pastels they are about 7 times the size of a normal stick. So that's probably about what these are. But what I do happen to have here is a Paul Rubens oil paint stick, a large one. So I'm going to take that out of its container so we can compare the size. So you'll see that yes, they are the same size. Now this, when it was first new, had a beveled edge on it, so that makes up for the difference in size. And they are in fact just about the same circumference or diameter as each other. Maybe the oil stick might be a little bit chunkier, but I would suspect they all differ slightly anyway. So this is 7 times an oil pastel, so that makes the oil stick. Now I don't believe that they make smaller oil sticks as in the size of this oil pastel, but I do know that there are half sticks in different brands. So they'd probably be somewhere around about that sort of size, so they'd be quite useful, and probably a bit closer to the normal oil stick size, or oil pastel size I should say. Picked up the white just to have a really fair comparison. So you're probably saying to yourself, well, what is the difference of them? Now obviously one is an oil pastel, which is this one, and one is an oil paint stick, which is this one, and kind of that's erring towards giving you the information you need, because it says oil paint stick. These are not oil paints, these are oil pastels. Now the main difference is that oil sticks, they contain a drying oil, whereas oil pastels do not. Now that means that over time an oil stick will dry, just like oil paint. In fact, this is no different to oil paint other than it has this drying oil in it, and some wax, I believe. Whereas the oil pastel will not dry completely. You will always be able to manipulate this. This will dry, that will not dry, and it's because this has a non-drying oil in it. Now another difference that we can tell you about these is that generally oil sticks produce a glossy finish, and that can be varnished. Now oil pastels obviously yes can be varnished. Now obviously the best way of doing that is with the Sennelier oil pastel fixative, which is also a varnish in itself, and also the same with the talons, and there are other ones emerging as we go on. Now it is said that oil pastels have a softer, more powdery consistency. Now I'm going to I'm going to argue against that because it does all depend on the oil pastel you have. Now, if we were talking about the Caran d'Ache oil pastels, I'd say, yeah, almost definitely although it's not powdery, it would feel more powdery. But when we're talking about things like Sennelier, and especially the Light Wish, they kind of don't feel that much different. In fact, these feel a bit thicker and stickier. Generally, you would need glass to protect an oil pastel painting, but you would varnish your oil stick painting and you can get away without having glass. Having said that, you can do varnish on an oil pastel as well. The composition of an oil pastel is that it's made with pigment and a non-drying oil, as I just said, and wax. Whereas the composition of a oil stick or oil bar, whatever you want to call them, is that they're made with pure pigment, a drying oil and a very small amount of wax. As I said, oil pastels do not dry or harden over time. They do get slightly harder. In fact, if you left your oil pastels a week, they will get slightly harder and you'll be able to layer even better. But these oil paint sticks will dry, but at a much slower rate than the oil pastels. But they will dry completely, whereas these don't. Now, if you're putting on thick layers of oil paint sticks, you'll probably be looking at least a week for that to dry so you can layer over it again. With a water-soluble one, it's slightly different. A water-soluble layer, dependent on its thickness, of course, would take a little bit less time than that. But when you're painting, as I did with my swan, you would take a bit more time to do it than an oil pastel generally. It's a lot of fun, I have to say. And, you know, thinner layers will take a couple of days to dry, up to a week, possibly a little bit longer. These will never dry, but they will get to a point where you can layer. And in fact, you can layer these oil pastels better directly or immediately, I should say. Pastels offer a creamy and smooth application to the canvas or paper, and they're ideal for texture and vibrant, dramatic drawings. And oil sticks are used like oil paint for direct applications and very good blending and creating impasto effects. In fact, better than oil pastels. Oil pastels do create them, but again, that all depends on the oil pastel you're using, whereas most oil paint sticks will do that anyway. The types of paintings you would use these for, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think you can use both of these for any type of painting. There is going to be some manipulation and blending and moving and creating textures in both, and one will be harder than the other. The oil paint stick, I would say, would be harder for some things but easier for others, whereby you won't have pilling as such, whereas you could do with oil pastels. And you are able to actually move this better, but it's harder to actually get it to where you want, as in detailed areas and things like that. Whereas these, they can pill, dependent on the quality, of course, and they are relatively easy to get into detailed areas, in my opinion, because that's the way I paint. Not for everybody, though, it has to be said. So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. I'm going to show you my tiger that I did, and I did that with oil pastels, but that was with the smaller oil pastels, and that was with a mid-range oil pastel. And then I'm going to show you my swan that I did with the oil paint sticks. I think the thing you will see is that both of them do actually produce an oil painting look, The oil painting look is considerably more with an oil paint stick than it would be with an oil pastel, and that's purely because it is actually oil paint, and it is a lot more difficult with an oil paint stick to get them details, so it gives you more of a painterly look. However, you can get the same with oil pastels, but it won't quite look like an oil painting in the way that these do. As I said, these are water soluble, these ones I have. I really would like to try some ordinary ones, because I think, for me personally, I think they would be easier to use than a water soluble. However, I do like the fact that you can turn these into water soluble underlayers. That's the way I use them. To sum up, the composition is different, the texture is different. This is oil paint, this is oil pastel, and it has more wax in it. This has less wax. This has a less drying oil. This has a quicker drying oil. They're the same size as large oil sticks. You can buy half bars, you can buy smaller oil pastels. These will dry up slower, however, they will dry up completely. These will dry up a bit, but they'll never dry completely. Both can be varnished, both can be fixed. Oil painterly look, use an oil paint stick, and oil pastel look, use an oil pastel. The difference in price, I would say, once you are getting up to the dearer, more professional oil pastels, will be probably quite minimal, but you would probably get quite a lot of oil pastels in comparison to oil paint sticks. They are in fact actually quite dear, or quite expensive, so you'd have to sort of build up to them. And from what I've seen, there isn't so many colours on the market. I'm probably looking at about 30 colours from what I've seen, whereas in oil pastels, as you know, you can get at least 120 colours in a lot of the brands. So how would I lay them onto paper? Well, in all honesty, it all depends whether they're water soluble. Of course, we get water soluble oil pastels as well. I think I wouldn't use them any different, if I'm being honest. I would lay a light layer of each, blend it out, and then just go from there and layer layers on top of layers, bearing in mind that an oil paint stick must dry more than an oil pastel before you lay the next layers on, if you're not going for that kind of wet in wet look. That's just a very brief overview of oil pastels and oil sticks. There's probably a lot more I could say, but what's the point of me baffling you with science? I might as well just tell you basically what they are and the differences between them and how you can get going with them. I have to say, enjoy oil pastels, but when I first used these oil paint sticks, I found them really hard. But as I got on and got used to them a bit more, I really enjoyed the whole process. And the picture I've come up with, I've put in an open frame. I'll show you that now. I've put it in this open frame and I've varnished it. I must say, I'm getting a lot of compliments about it. And, you know, I'm really chuffed with that. I must admit, it pushed me more towards not making detail. I know the picture may look slightly detailed, and yes, it is. For an oil paint stick, it is a detailed picture, because most people are using them as abstract painting materials. In my opinion, if you're going to pay all that money on an oil paint stick, why wouldn't you want to get the best work you can out of it? Yes, you can do your abstracts. There's not a problem with that. And why would I have a problem with that? But if you want to do something better, or different, I should say, maybe not better, that's probably the wrong thing to say. But if you want to do something different and more detailed, use them for that. Use them in the way you would use oil pastels, but let them dry in between layers. Lay them lightly, spread them out, use a brush, use blending tools, use all them things you can use with oil pastels, and probably a bit more. They're really enjoyable. I like them, but I do love my oil pastels, as you know. I will come up with more oil stick videos and tutorials as we go on. I need to build up the collection because, as I said, there isn't so many colours and they are actually quite expensive. So in time we will do some more. I do have one really good tip which I'm going to bring to you in another video, because one of the fundamental things about oil pastels and oil sticks is that an oil pastel can be stored straight back in the box and everything will be fine and it'll be ready for the next time you use it. But an oil paint stick, the crust over the tip, and probably down here as well, I haven't unwrapped it yet, it will form this crust. So you'll use it, and where I can show you now, look, I mean, if I do that over this, I'm not getting a lot of texture off, but if I was to peel that skin off, that would be very gloopy on my finger, very gloopy. That's just showing me that hasn't quite dried off, that's all. So down at this end, look, nothing. So that has got a dried up skin over the top of it, and you have to scrape that off before you start using them. But like I said, with an oil pastel, you actually don't. They are fun. They are great. I was lucky enough to get these water-soluble ones from Phoenix. I haven't seen many water-soluble ones. I believe Soho make one, which I believe is part of Jerry's Artarama. I'm not sure. I'm not American, so I wouldn't know. But that's the impression I got. That would help. And they are a little bit cheaper than your normal ones. Your Sennelier ones and your R&F ones are really quite expensive. But then, so are your Caran d'Ache and Sennelier oil pastels. But you do get more colours. But they're smaller sticks. If you had the big sticks, they'd probably be just as expensive. I hope that's give you a quick overview anyway. I'm not going to waffle on anymore. Lay them on lightly. Have fun with them because they are a lot of fun. Abstract, detailed, whatever you want to do. And until next time, have a lot of fun painting. So whomever, wherever you are, please have a great day, a great week and a great year. And I will see you in the next video. Before I go, please remember I have a membership for my channel. The more members I get, the more I'm going to do. Please subscribe and like and comment. All them things, all the normal things that everybody says. So anyway, as I said, have a great day, great week and a great year. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.